Hey, Red Clay Rambler fans, I want to thank you for spending your time with me listening to world-class artists talk about their lives and creativity. It's an honor to produce this podcast, and I appreciate you choosing to listen week in and week out. As we wrap up 2021, I need your help funding future episodes. For our fall fund drive, I ask that if you're able, you commit $4 a month to the show. That's only $1 an episode to keep you inspired and connected to the greater ceramic community. There are two easy ways to donate, one through the PayPal portal at talesofredclayrambler.com/donate, or by making a monthly pledge at patreon.com/redclayrambler. If you join Patreon today, you can access perks like podcast swag, as well as the Patreon-exclusive Tales from the Vault podcast, which features remastered episodes that are no longer available on major podcast apps. Thanks for the support, and let's get on with the show. Welcome to the Tales of a Red Clay Rambler podcast, featuring interviews with culture makers from around the world. This is Ben Carter. I'm going to be your host. If you'd like more information on the show, please visit our website, talesofaredclayrambler.com. So we're here for the 400th episode, and every 100 episodes, my wife, Melissa, thankfully will come on the show and be the guest host. And it's a good chance for us to catch up on Mike, I guess, to let the listeners know what's happening. I don't know. Do you think people really care what's going on in our lives?
We'll find out when we get the download numbers.
When 7 people download this, then we'll know.
Yes, exactly.
But I put out a call on Instagram, and people submitted some questions. So we're going to talk about the topics that people brought up, and also just kind of talk about what's changed since number 300, which we looked up, I think was 2019 or 18?
I think that's right. 19. Something like that. Not too long ago.
That was before pandemic. That feels like it was 100 years ago.
So one of the questions that we got that's a really good one to start off with is from Britta Schroeder. And the question is, in our house, we use the game Best Worst to talk about our day, vacation, year, or special moments. So what are the best and worst parts of the last 400 episodes of Tales of the Red Clay Rambler for you?
This is a good one. And thanks for Britta for being a constant support. I really appreciate that. So my best, I think, is that people still want to come on the show and talk. Because what is exciting to me is just that I get to talk to artists. And a lot of it is I get to talk to artists that I love their work, and I'm trying to figure out something about them. You know, like, how did they stay motivated? Like when you talk to someone who's been working for 50 years in clay, like, motivation is a big point. I mean, sometimes I have a hard time being motivated month to month, much less like 50 years of doing something. So the idea that people still will say yes to the interviews, I think, is probably the best part. And also, I'm still surprised by people's answers. And I think it's nice when someone, like, gets me. I mean, I think that's a good interview, though, is when something happens that you're not expecting to happen. Because after 400... maybe this is the worst part, that I kind of know what's going to happen usually. And then when people go real outside of the box, then it's really exciting. I mean, I don't know if anyone can hear, but what you would see if you were watching Zoom is me get like all super excited and wide-eyed because they just divulged something that I didn't think they were going to, or they were talking about a topic that I didn't think they wanted to talk about. So that's always exciting.
Hopefully helps that you're talking to creative individuals. Maybe you get that a little bit more.
That is true. But I think also the best parts of this is that there's been a community that's grown up around the show. And I mean, I think I probably tell you when people write in with comments and things that are nice, like that is very heartening. And then I also love when I'll post something on Instagram related to the show of the week, and people will then, I can tell, are reaching out to the artist, because that's the end goal, is like how to create dialogue within the community based off of whatever's happening. So I think that's also the best part.
Community engagement.
Yeah.
That is really good. So worst is just that you've done 400.
No, that's not.
No, I think that's the best part.
I should reframe that. The predictability of people, I think, is the worst part, but that's not actually worst. I think people react in a way that you expect them to react. So some of this has to do with expectation, because one of the reasons I loved doing live shows back in the pre-COVID era is that once you got people in front of an audience, you just didn't know what was going to happen. And that is the best. That's not the worst. Like that is so exciting. And it doesn't matter if you've got like a room full of people. Like I've done them in theaters where we had, it was packed. And then I've done them where we had like 10 people staring back at the four of us that were talking. But either way, there's something about that audience dynamic that makes it super exciting. I think the worst part is still the editing, because there's no faster way to edit. And I mean, I've talked about this, I think, when we've done previous ones, but for every hour that's on the air, there's probably like 10 hours of work maybe that go in a smooth show, about 10 hours. But sometimes I'll run into some sound issue that I could just let it go and put it out and it would sound like crap and that would be fine. Like, I don't think people are going to stop listening if one sounds bad, but I get fixated on like, how do I take out the refrigerator hum beside the person that was talking? And then I can't let it go. So maybe the worst part is my mind. I think it's my OCD, me going, no, I can make this sound better.
This is like, for me, teaching, grading. Grading is the worst part. And you have to do it, and it takes up a lot of time, and there's just no way around it. You can't do the job without it. It just is.
Well, this is kind of a tangential topic, but one of the things that you are always very patient with me is that I'll bring you everything I ever write and you'll proofread it. And sometimes you'll be grading and you literally will have said like, oh, I'm in essay 30 out of 40 or something. And I'll be
they're
like,
all running together. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'll ask you, hey, can you proofread these show notes? And you always say yes. So why are you so patient?
That's a great question. Well, part of it is that, I mean, of course, you can talk about, there's ways of trying to get around this, but many times when I assign an assignment, a written assignment, I'm going to get back a lot of very similar responses. And it just becomes difficult to read a very similar thing over and over again and keep them separate and so on in my mind. Whereas I'm not reading 30 different podcast show notes by different hosts that are all incredibly similar. They don't run together. They don't get tedious. I learn new things when I read that, which in many ways describes the best parts of teaching and interacting with my students, but it doesn't always happen. Sometimes you just get a lot of very similar responses. And so, yeah, it's the repetition that makes it difficult, I think. I don't know about if that's the same for editing, but.
And if you're even if I'm a little bit tired, like even just a little bit tired, I do not want to look at a computer. And I see that with you're really good about keeping a pace with your grading so that you give yourself a goal. Well, this is what it seems like, is that you give yourself a goal, like, okay, I'm going to do 12 today, and then I'll do 12 tomorrow. But if you didn't sleep good, or if you had to teach 2 classes, whatever is the scenario, getting to that 11th one out of 12 is probably pretty hard.
Yes, then I downgrade to, I'm going to grade 5 today. And then I'm going to be forced to do 17 tomorrow or whatever it is. That's not how the math works, but.
I'm going to be annoying and ask you questions. Is that cool?
I knew I wasn't really the guest host. Go ahead.
I can't help it. Let's talk about best worst of teaching a school year that was half online and half in person.
Well, this year, if we think about this, you mean thinking about 2021 as a year? Not okay.
A calendar year.
I know. I'm so wrapped up in the academic calendar. Yeah, so spring was online for us and the fall semester was back in person. That's a really good question. I mean, being back in the same room was really great, especially in my smaller classes where I could actually interact with the students. But given some of my larger classes, classroom size, social distancing, I actually, in some of the larger classes and spaces, felt more distant from some of my students because I didn't actually get quite as much face-to-face, like close interaction with some students as I did over Zoom. So that really varied a lot. And again, I think that's how classes go in general. Larger classes, you interact a little bit less. Smaller classes, you interact a little bit more. But it's really pronounced if you're trying to social distance, everybody's wearing masks, and you're in a really large classroom space and so on.
Yeah, I guess you can't read facial expression.
Not nearly as much. Yeah. I mean, you can still read people based on their eyes. And then, of course, when they're speaking, tone of voice and all of that. But yeah, it definitely is it is a small barrier. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. Best part of like all of this. I feel like the fact that we have all made it through is the best part. I feel like I and everyone I know has learned some new digital skills, which is really great. So that's been good. We've all expanded our repertoire in terms of the kinds of programs, software, methods that we can all use to engage with each other, like full stop, not even just in an educational setting. Everyone knows how to use Zoom now, whether you are working or enrolled at a university or not. So that's neat. Good to learn.
I feel like our parents learned really quickly, which is good. I mean, your parents are a lot younger than mine, but my dad is pretty much up to speed, which is saying a lot. But pre-pandemic, about once a month, I would have to spend a while explaining something to him.
Like Netflix.
Yes. Like, how do you use Netflix?
Yes. So we should ask our other listener question. We have a question from Judy Tavel. What are the top few things that you have learned about potters and artists?
I think the main thing, and maybe this is because we're in COVID that I've been thinking about this, is just how resilient artists are. Because I keep having these stories, and this happened before COVID, but I've been noticing it more. Someone will start a story, and they'll be telling me something that really bad happened in their life, but they're not telling me the story because they're focused on how that was like the end of their career. They always frame it as, oh, the kiln shed caught on fire, so then I stopped doing salt firing, and now I'm doing electric firing, and actually it's helped my career go in a whole new direction. And I think this eternal optimism that is necessary to be an artist has come in really, really handy in a lot of the people that I've been interviewing. Like, that's the way people have dealt with COVID, is not to ignore the fact that a lot of things have been bad, but just like, yeah, there are bad. Like, things have changed. Schools have closed down and now they're opening again. Like, people, I think, have framed all this as, yes, X bad thing happened, but now I can do this, this, and this, And I think that's a skill. That's like our magic artist skill is that we deal with rejection. I want to say that the artists that I know that have been artists for decades, they talk about dealing with rejection as just an inherent part of the creative process, as opposed to thinking about it being like a finality that they need to stop being artists. And I think about just how many people have whole kiln loads that they lose. This happened when I worked at Black Mountain Studios, when I was working with Maud and Austin Bowman. And sometimes we would have like a third of the kiln load would just be lost pots. But we just kept working and kept doing that and kept right on going.
There's definitely a certain amount of failure that is expected in your field that obviously you can you can do something poorly and have it not turn out the way you want in any field. But I think there is something about I pushed one wrong button and I ruined 400 hours of work or I tried a new glaze and everything is unsellable, I think is somewhat unique to artists and maybe even potters. Hard to say. I don't know many other artists, so yeah.
When you were talking about that, I was thinking about pushing the wrong button. When I was in grad school, I was so tired. This was probably my second year, so I was like hitting my stride, but I was not sleeping enough and working way too much. This is a classic grad school tale. And instead of I was firing these glazes. Instead of firing to 04, I was firing to like 06 and holding it for an hour. But I held it for 10 hours because I pushed one too many zero.
Whoops.
Yeah. And the effect, I did learn that if you hold pots at 06 or maybe 05, somewhere like that for 10 hours, it's kind of the equivalent with work heat of firing them to cone 6. But the only bad thing is that my friend Pat also had work in that kiln.
Oh man!
And so I just ruined so much of his work by doing that.
Wow! So you had to be resilient, but you also forced Pat to have to be resilient.
Yes. The other thing that I've been thinking about with artists is how many people's work has shifted in pretty major ways. So, like, let's think about Julia Galloway. She's been working on this series about species that have gone extinct or that are on endangered species. And so she's been doing these exhibitions with like 300 urns. So you walk into the gallery. Did we see one of these shows?
I don't think so. I've seen parts of that work, but not the urns.
I feel like I have either seen a video or maybe I've seen the show in person. But you walk into the gallery and you'll look around and there'll be urns everywhere. And there's something about that form being so synonymous with death that when you see the animal drawn on the outside of it, like it's a very powerful statement on climate change and human interaction. But it's also, you walk in, this is how her shows always are. When you see that many objects, it's such a tour de force that it's pretty amazing. But if you go backwards 5 years, she wasn't making anything about climate change or endangered species. She was, I believe that was in an era she was doing a lot of cloud drawings and thinking about sort of landscape, the Montana landscape. And then if you go 5 years back farther than that, she was doing the Birds of North America series, which was just phenomenal. So I think about someone like her and how much she's changed in a relatively small amount of time. And I'm so impressed with people that are dedicated to the new idea. Because a lot of times I think I'm dedicated to better execution of the old idea. And I get real caught up if I can get the glaze right, if I can get that brushstroke just right, and it's skill chasing, like I get fascinated with skill chasing, but that can be a rabbit hole that you can't get out of.
You can tinker forever.
Yeah. But then you see someone like Julia, she has amazing skills, but she's developed those skills by shifting pretty major ideas through different bodies of work. The techniques are similar in a way, but I've seen her develop skills that I feel like have taken me years. She'll do it in like 6 months. Like she'll pick up China painting or like some new type of surface and then just like burn through the idea to get that skill. So I'm really interested in that. I think that progression I didn't really see coming. Doug Peltzman was another example in the part of the recording that didn't get recorded. I was thinking about how Doug's work has changed so much. Like there was a whole era, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, where a lot of people were doing graphic drawings on pots, and his were some of the ones I liked the best, like his patterns, and we've got some of his pots. But then to see what he's doing now, he's gone looking more at form and layering of glazes to make these like beautiful surfaces and brighter colors, like putting a pink matte glaze or like a reddish pink matte glaze beside a green one. Like he's doing all these things that I just was not expecting. So I think that somehow ties into like resiliency on one side, but the other point of that spectrum is just being adventurous, like accepting that you might screw it up, but you're going to go through it anyway.
I like that.
We'll be right back after a quick word from our sponsors. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Amico Brent. For the past 100 years, Amico Brent has been creating ceramic supplies for our community, ranging from underglazes to electric kilns, and they have no plans of slowing down. With over 3,000 products, Amico Brent's top priority is making sure that all of their customer needs are met. From the professional to the student and everyone in between, their high-quality materials enable you to make your best work. To learn more, check them out at amico.com or on Instagram and Facebook at Amico Brent. You can also show them how you use Amico by sharing your work online with the hashtag HowIAmico. Today's episode is brought to you by the Rosenfeld Collection of Functional Ceramic Art. The collection exists as an online resource for research and inspiration, featuring photos of thousands of objects made by over 800 artists. The images are high quality and can be used with no permission required, making them a great resource for students and teachers. To find out more, visit rosenfeldcollection.com.
So I know that one of the other things that you wanted to do with this episode was get some listener questions and also just give sort of general life updates on what's going on in the Ben Carter world.
No, what's going on in our world. The Ben and Melissa world.
Yes, but you were the draw here.
But what's cool is that we're going to have a baby.
Yes.
Which we're both very excited about.
And soon.
Yes, very soon. Like, it's imminent.
There is no way I should be pregnant for another month, which is wonderful. And I am happy to be at that stage.
So, are you tired of me asking you if you're feeling all right?
No, I appreciate that.
Okay, good. Because I feel like every day, usually in the morning, I'm like, "Are you okay?"
It is getting harder and harder to get up from lying down, to lie back down, to bend down. I'm getting a little more sore, a little more creaky, all of that. I mean, I cannot complain I think the third trimester can be very rough on some people. And for me, it's been not enjoyable, but it's also been fine. So, but I am still definitely looking forward to, of course, I'm looking forward to having a baby. I'm also looking forward to not being pregnant. It's going to be a double win when it happens.
Sometime in the first trimester, you were like, they should tell people that pregnancy sucks a lot of the time.
I believe that Amy Schumer has a much better bit about this than I do, about how terrible pregnancy is and how no one talks about it. It's just a 9-month marathon of the only upsides are upsides that you get to have as well. So it really doesn't seem like there's much, it just seems like bad luck that I'm the one with the uterus. Yeah, of course you get a baby out of it. And that's wonderful, but you get a baby out of it.
That is true.
You didn't have to be pregnant for 9 months. This seems very unfair.
Yes, it is the genetic lottery of humankind.
Yeah. But luckily, you are going to be the minivan driver of our family, which you are actually excited about. This is not a punishment in any way. But I'm glad that you want to be the minivan driver in our family.
And I'm just really glad we're going to have a minivan because I've wanted a minivan for probably seriously 20 years.
Your whole life?
My whole adult life, I've wanted a minivan because there are many perks to a minivan. One big one is that our child will be very easy to get in and out of that minivan.
Don't lie. That's not why you want it.
But let me tell you the other good reasons that a minivan is helpful.
Tell me.
One, you can put so much more clay in a minivan than you can put in the kind of car we have now, which is like a small
SUV.
SUV. Almost said CRV. It is a CRV, but it is also an SUV.
Yeah.
But with this minivan that we're going to get, you can put a full sheet of plywood in there. You can put...
The listeners are riveted. Tell us
this
more.
This is riveting podcast right here. What can fit in a minivan? But I mean, think about also just how much easier it is on your back to be loading crates of pots in and out of a minivan versus even the very first car I ever had was a Subaru. What was it? It was a station wagon, but a Legacy station wagon. I don't know. It was before Outback, and I would pack that thing so full of pots, but you're kind of bend the way your back had to bend to get things. It was like loading. Here's a Potter analogy. It's like loading an Anagama when you have to crawl in through the front. Like it's much easier to load an Anagama when it's actually on a hill and you don't have to bend over so far to get in. The wood fires will know what I'm talking about.
I'm sure.
So yeah, I'm pumped. I'm pumped to have this minivan. And thankfully, we found an old minivan that has low miles, which is, I mean, that's like this is the pottery lottery.
And by we mean my wonderful father who loves looking at used cars.
Yes. He is kind of a used car, not an expert, but a something. He has a way of finding even really old used cars that you would think you shouldn't buy a 20-year-old car, but then he finds the ones that are low mileage enough that it's all right.
And in great shape, yeah.
I feel like a sign of status in the pottery world should be like, like there's kind of benchmarks like graduating undergrad, getting a residency, all that is when you actually have made enough money to buy a new car. That would be amazing. We're not at that place yet.
I was going to say, if that's your benchmark for success, I don't know. I like secondhand cars personally.
I feel like the new car level is like another 10 years down the road for us, but
post daycare maybe.
I like the idea that you could have such an amazing object that you bought through selling pots. But I mean, we did buy a house
we're doing fine.
2 years ago?
Yeah.
A year ago?
Year and a half.
A year and a half ago. And that's been kind of a miracle.
And it's been really wonderful. Yeah. It is really nice to own a house. I mean, there are some downsides in terms of the large amount of money we have sunk into the home for repairs and things like that. But, oh man, I don't miss renting.
We should have done a podcast episode where I just walked around the house and went, why in the hell would they ever do it like this? That could have been the name of the episode.
The experience of new homeowners who buy a not new home everywhere.
So we bought this house and we thought that it was not a fixer-upper. And then we discovered that it was a fixer-upper.
Yes.
Actually, it was when the electrician came to look at the fixes that needed to happen. And he started showing us where they had hidden electrical cords in the wall, like as in extension cords in the wall.
Yeah, this house was a death trap.
It was a death trap. And when they started fixing the plugs, Todd, the one guy, said that some of the plugs fell apart in his hands when he was taking them apart. And the woman that we bought the house from was 87, I think. So I feel like, man, it's a miracle that this place did not burn down.
We have made some serious upgrades, mostly in terms of making it into a not death trap. A nice, comfortable, safe home, yeah.
Well, I think, though, about the way that this, like buying a home and being in one place has changed so much about the way I think about working now. Because the last 2 years, I have made less pots than I've ever made in my pottery work since 1995. I've probably made pots out of 24 months. I probably made pots 5 months out of 24, maybe 6. And the rest of the time was spent remodeling the house and painting and working on new podcast projects and like all fun stuff. But it was a little bit touch and go. I kind of thought that I was maybe going to lose my creativity. And did I seem cranky? Because I felt cranky.
Not in particular, no.
Okay.
You're not generally a cranky person, though.
I felt cranky, though. I was like, I'm not making enough pots. Am I going to lose it? Not lose it like go insane. Lose it like, am I going to forget how to throw, how to decorate, how to whatever? But what was cool is that I got to teach at Penland this fall for concentration, which thank you for being so flexible about me leaving while you're pregnant. But when I was teaching there, I realized so much about myself as a creative person that what gave me more energy beyond just working every day and having that rhythm was seeing other people get excited about their work. Because I had so many good students that were growing rapidly. Like it was 6 weeks. So from week 1 to week 3, people were making massive leaps. Like decoration, I could tell that they were understanding like figure ground on a pot. Like they were making big strides. And that gave me so much energy.
And it makes sense, too, because not only, of course, you talk about being busy with all of the things that we've had going on in the last 2 years personally, but also, of course, so many things got canceled during the pandemic, so you weren't going out and teaching. So those are some big shifts and you didn't have any of the same outlets as usual.
Yeah, so we've been doing all these activities, and we keep saying, oh, this is the last dinner party we'll have, or this is the last...
Not forever, but certainly for a little while we adjust.
Yeah. Can I ask you questions about baby stuff?
Sure.
Okay. How do you think you're going to change after having a baby?
I don't know. That's a really good question. And something that I think is, I don't know, I don't want to say like hard to predict, because I think it's not just a random chance roll a die. Some things are, in terms of like, I think how you deal with that particular stressor and maybe how it can affect your mental health. But I don't think that like the way that a person grows and changes throughout their life is random. I think you can control that, and you can work to become, like I hope to work to become someone who can balance parenthood and all the other areas of my life. I hope to let it focus me more. I've heard that of course you have less time for other things, but that you get better at being able to use your time more effectively because you have less time because you have a child. I mean, I think I'm looking forward to finding out. Yeah, I don't know. How do you think about it?
Well, I've never thought about us changing in this way. Like when we met, we lived overseas. So even moving back to the States, I didn't think like, oh, I'm looking forward to seeing who we'll become. But somehow with this, like being parents is such a life-changing event that I am looking forward about who we'll become. And I think it's almost, instead of it being like a duality, like I change and you change and I change and you change. Now it'll be like we both change and our child changes. And I might change in my level of hopefully in my level of like patience and compassion and lovingness relative to the child, but also you will be. Like I think the biggest change factors in our life will no longer be each other. It'll be the child. Right?
And it is such an intense shared experience. I mean, any relationship is that. It is a shared experience, but you're right. You went to graduate school before we met, and then I went to graduate school, and we got, we did a lot of traveling separately and doing things. We have both been through many different things that I think have contributed to who we are now. That weren't necessarily the same thing, but this is going to be one really big thing that's the same thing. I think that's true. I think it'll be nice.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think we're going to be okay, even though about once a week, I think, oh God, what have we done? And usually it's Thursdays. I don't know what it is about Thursdays. I think it's because by that point I have done so much computer work, like for podcast network stuff, that my brain is just kind of mushy. And I'm like, oh, I need to get in the studio. But then I think, when I have a child, I'm never going to make pottery again. Which I know is not true.
I love to point out all of your friends who are parents and very accomplished potters when you say that.
Yes. It is interesting that my general anxieties and worries have gotten less because we're more stable now. Like having a home, living in one spot. Like I feel like we're committed to New Jersey in a way that we have not been to any of the places we've lived. But that anxiety is now shifted. And now I'll have these little, what do they call it? Doom spirals.
Doom spirals, yes.
And I don't think you doom spiral.
Not very often, no.
I do every Thursday.
Every Thursday.
I don't know what's going on. You know what? Thursday is the day the podcast comes out. So I bet you what it is that I'm just stressed because I'm like, oh, I've got to get everything edited. I got to get it together. And then
general
whatever.
High stress levels. Yeah.
Yeah.
We're figuring you out right here.
We are.
As we talk.
I've really needed this. I'm so glad we're talking. I hope that the balance that you seem to naturally have, that we'll be able to keep that balance moving forward. Because sometimes I feel like I'm a little bit like all over the place mentally, but you seem to be like very focused. So I like that you said that you feel like parenting will focus you on something.
I hope so. Yeah. I don't, obviously this is the kind of change that you can only prepare so much for, and then you just have to go through it, and then you figure things out as you go. You can't prepare for everything. But I do think I feel like we've prepared and we have become stable. You maybe don't see yourself as entirely balanced, but I feel like in general we strike a good balance between social, personal, work, all of those things that, okay, I feel like we can level up now, you know? We have the tools, we have the skills. I think it'll be okay.
We have the minivan.
We have the minivan.
Not yet, but we're going to get one.
We're going to get one. Yes. Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So I feel like this is a good place to wrap up. The questions that we got from Britta and Judy, thank you for those questions. And thank you to the listeners. I should take a moment and just say, there are some listeners, I think, that have listened to almost all of them, which is a miracle. I should send you a gift. If you have listened to all 400 episodes, I will send you something. Just DM me, Carter Pottery on Instagram, and I'll think of something to send you to thank you, because that's amazing.
It is.
But this is a good time to talk about that there's going to be a series, because I'm going to take a paternity leave. I'm going to have one more episode that comes out after this one, which is coming out next week. And then I'm going to take a paternity leave, and some of my friends are going to guest host on the show. And they're going to be hosting shows about parenting, which is going to be exciting. And then we're also going to be re-airing some of the older episodes that are no longer available on the normal podcast apps.
That sounds great. I'm very excited for you to take a paternity leave.
And then also, I wanted to plug the Brickyard Network, which I've been working on, which has been super exciting. I've been able to work more on the producing end of podcasts than just hosting, and that has been super rewarding. So if you guys aren't listening to the shows already, make sure to check them out. So I think we're over. I think we've run out of things to talk about.
I think that's true. I hope that everybody is enjoying their holidays, and we'll talk to you at 500, I guess.
Yes. If we make it to 500, we're going to do this again.
Yeah. I think we'll have some updates.
Yes. Okay. Oh, yeah. I forgot. I'm having a sale right now.
Oh, yeah. You should plug yourself.
I forget to do this. CarterPottery.com/shop. The sale is going on. And then also, this is the last show of our Fall Fund Drive. So if you have listened this far, you are probably a podcast fan. If you've hung in there and subjected yourself to listening to Melissa and I talk for this long, then please make a donation. And we're trying to get to 100 donors, and we have not quite reached that goal. So please get involved. And you can do that at the website. So that's talesofredclayrambler.com/donate. I feel like I'm like a soap salesman or something. I have so many things that I'm plugging, but that's what a podcast is, right?
Yeah.
But thanks, everybody. Thanks for being a part of this episode, as well as the others that have come out before.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Yeah, happy holidays. If you'd like more information on the artists on the show, or if you'd like more information about the workshops and events that I'll be having in the next couple months, you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under Carter Pottery. Another great way to support the show is to leave me a comment on iTunes. To do that, search Tales of a Red Clay Rambler under iTunes Podcasts, and you'll find a page that's linked to our show. Thank you guys for the support.
This podcast is a production of the Brickyard Network, an extension of the Archie Bray Foundation for the Ceramic Arts. To find out more about our lineup of ceramic podcasts, visit brickyardnetwork.org.
Are you recording?
Hey, I started recording and it cut itself off.
Ben Carter, professional podcaster.
Yes.
We're definitely recording.
We're definitely recording.
Card's not full.
Card's not full.
Okay. I'm reassured.
Thanks for doing this. I love you.
I love you too.